Hello, everyone. It's good to be here talking to you about some advice that comes through sometimes in emails from people who want to know how they can immigrate into New Zealand. And the topic for the day that's relevant from one of the questions that has come through, priorities of scheduling. You're making a trip to New Zealand. How do you decide to make this trip? When, for how long, and how to plan for it? What does that whole thing look like? I've got some principles and ideas for you to follow, and this comes from having years of experience in the New Zealand market, watching lots of people go through the process with them. So helping a lot of people through the process, understanding what works, what doesn't work, and hearing stories from people that I haven't helped and have helped through the process. So one person has written to me and asked, now this has to do with a job that I'm being considered for. So I may be providing someone with some services, and this has been a dialogue that goes back and forth. You know, sometimes we have these dialogues to get to know what people want, and they obviously want to evaluate what the service is all about. Because I have a unique service. It's not something that anyone else offers in the New Zealand market. At the same time, it is highly effective as well, I might say. There's a few standout features of what I offer that no one else is offering. I haven't looked at anyone else. But I have looked at many people coming through, and I can tell you that no one is giving these people anything close to what I'm giving them. So people have questions. It's not only the testimonials. They want to know directly how my services apply to them. So one question, it comes from a middle manager. This is important because middle managers often, and in this case, the middle manager would like to have a checklist and just go down and say, this done, this done, this done, this done. And, you know, middle managers are managers and they're implementers. They get things done and they report, and they make sure that, you know, that things are scheduled and completed and to a certain specification, you know, so that they can fulfill their responsibilities as middle managers. This is their role. So this is how they think. This is how they push processes through in their lives. So one question comes to me whether I might be able to push my process together, my deliverable, my service in a short period of time so that the client to-be would be able to come faster to New Zealand and start looking for work faster. Now, I've seen this before. I've seen the mentality before, and it is successful where it works, but it doesn't work here for some very elemental reasons, really simple reasons that are easy to understand and easy to explain. So I have some principles to follow if you want to come over to New Zealand. And that the first principle to follow is, and I'm not going to write all of this to this person, obviously. I'll give it a short and quick answer to this person that's relevant to this person. And if any, you know, I'm not going on and on. But I think for the purpose of this video, I will go into some detail because there's a philosophy here and there's a method and there's a way of thinking that can be very useful. Look, at the first point of view, this is an immigration to a different country. It includes all of the complexities that one can imagine when you're moving from one place, culture, location, way of living, relationships, how things operate. Often it's the language as well, currency, laws, how to get on interpersonal relationships. Everything is different. Some things are completely different. Some things are slightly different. Everything is different. So the gravity, I would say, as a first step, please consider the gravity. if you find yourself making a checklist that's comporting to your way of thinking and your way of doing things, then that's probably a mistake. The mistake is that you know what you're doing and you know how to do things in a foreign country. Have a little bit of flexibility here and respect for the fact that there are a lot of unknowns, and it may not be all accomplished on a schedule that you can just fit into a box. For example, employers that you're going to be contacting and meeting with may not be able to schedule to a very tight range of options for someone that they don't really know that well in a role that may or may not be a big priority for them, for that. So let's back off and let's have a look at the big picture, because I see a lot of mistakes happening, and it comes from this push that I want to immigrate. I've made a decision. I want to get it done. It doesn't work like that. Look, you can be aggressive. You can. There are ways to be aggressive, but it's going from the opposite direction. So let me explain. I'll get around to that. There is a way to be aggressive, but I want to back off and be flexible for a while and explain this whole thing, and then we'll show you how to really get things done quickly, because there is a way. Consider the gravity of what you're doing. The most important decision that you're making in your life is right now. If you're deciding to immigrate to another country, in this case, New Zealand, compare it to a marriage. You make a decision about a marriage. It's not something you just push into a box. Why not? Because it's a very important decision that will impact you for the rest of your life in intimate ways. It will affect everything about you. You have to make the right decision on how it's done, not just with whom, how it's done, the whole process, the phase of getting to know each other and that relationship and everything. There are similarities with immigration. Buying a house, huge decision. It also impacts you for a long period. These days, it's not the rest of your life. Probably you'll buy 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 houses in your life. I'm not talking about speculation. I'm talking about people that live in their houses and move through life in that way. There'll be a number of houses that you go to, but it will be generally a small number, and each decision is quite important. The region, it takes time to think about it. You have to explore. There's research. You can call it whatever word you want. I might use the word research very generally. It may not be going to the books, but going out to get a feeling for the places and talking with people, that's also a form of research. Understanding the decision before you make it is basically what you're doing. You don't say, I'm going to buy a house next week. Now let's get started. That's a respect out of the fact that this is a decision that has a lot of gravity. Buying a house. What else? New career. It's a big decision, right? In fact, we're talking about getting work now. The new career. It takes a while to decide. You should go and investigate some things and understand the impact in your life. So when you're coming to a new country, all these things are going to be impacted. Just think about it. The new house is going to happen. The marriage won't be new. Some people, it turns out that way. But the marriages do go under strain. And you will either, generally speaking, you'll be closer or farther away. It will push you together or push you apart. Obviously, it's better if you can be together right from the beginning. So involvement with your spouse is going to be key, because then you push together, which is good. You become a more of a team than you ever were before because of the difficulties. It is difficult. It takes time to get through. So this is a gravity of the respect for the gravity of the decision to immigrate and to find work. Give it space, give it time. How to think about it. Okay, how to think about this move. Consider first the source of information that you're collecting. Oftentimes, too often, people will hear from a source, and the source will be, for example, in a chat group. And it's someone who wrote in a chat group, someone who seems smart about other things, gave advice. You have to go to New Zealand to find work. Okay? Well, I know a lot of immigration agents that give that advice. I've heard a number of times, and it's wrong. It's wrong advice. Wrong advice. You have to come to New Zealand to get work. if you just take that phrase alone, you have to go to New Zealand to get work. What you're saying is, or at least the interpretation of what people hear is, I've got to go to New Zealand to get work. So I'm going to go to New Zealand to get work. That means I'm going to schedule it. I'm going to go. That's the wrong approach. The best approach is planning for success before you leave and go to New Zealand and implement contacts that you've already made, meetings that you've already started to set up with people that are in the place where you want to work. So the hiring decision makers. Then you're going to meetings. You're not just going to New Zealand. You're going to job interviews. There's a difference, Go to New Zealand to get work. It's not enough. Go to job interviews to get work. That's the way to go, right? So consider the source. There's a number of sources that pretend they know what they're talking about, or they may offer you good advice as well. They may actually have a lot of good advice, but there's just no experience involved with the getting the work part. That's the most important thing. Experience with getting work. Look at that. What is the track record? If someone is giving you advice, what's the track record of that experience? If you can find someone who's done it before successfully and can report back to you on what made that a success, that's good advice. At least that's relevant to that person, to that role, to the person's style, to a number of things, but it is relevant information. I have a number of testimonials on my YouTube page that include fresh reports from people who have just recently gotten work in New Zealand. And I do that because the fresh, I'm talking about fresh, like weeks from actually getting the job offer signed, the mind understands the feelings are still fresh. Everything about the process is still fresh in the mind, that you can get the explanation quite clearly. It's good information. So it's also good information to get someone who's been through it 1,000 times. I've been through this 1,000 times, more than 5,000 times. Many thousands of times I've been through this process in the past nearly 12 years now in New Zealand job market. I know the process very well. I'm not going to be surprised by too much. I've dealt with employer interface, people looking for jobs and each step of the way, from initial planning right through to the hiring and managing along the way, and sometimes looking for other work or getting the children, spouses to work, that sort of thing. Issues at work, positive and negative, these sorts of things, how the culture works, the differences there, all the nuances and details, legal type of all sorts of things, because as a recruiter you get involved in another dynamic as well. I'm not doing that anymore. And finally, one more piece of advice, and this is probably the most important. There's a book from Stephen Covey a long time ago. It is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I believe it's the first habit. I'm almost 100% sure the first habit is put first things first. So that's what highly effective people do. So you can be a highly effective person as well. Follow this advice of Stephen Covey. Put first things first. So I see people getting caught up in all these details. In this case, with this letter that I've received, and it's not the first time. It's a regular thing. And I understand why. People want to get things done, and they're approaching it in the way that they're used to. In this case, middle manager wants to approach it with a checklist, and you get things done. And it does work. It's fantastic to have that skill and to manage things through that way. But if you put things first, you should put the job process first. Because if you don't have the job process first, how are you going to get the job? The job has to happen in order to accomplish the rest of the immigration process, in order to get the residency. That's what this is all about. People who are on the work to residency use me to sort out the job side. Although I'm not an immigration agent, I give no advice at all about visas or anything like that, but I do help them find work. Yeah, and that helps satisfy their bigger picture of immigrating into New Zealand. So put first things first. You need the job to make it happen, so put the employer first. So we're working backwards, right? Someone needs residency to happen, and they know that in order to get residency, they need a job, right? The job has to happen. In order to get the job, you need to meet an employer. That has to happen. So who's first? The employer's first. The employer's needs are first. Meeting that person and getting to know that person. And the employer's form isn't necessarily the owner, it's the hiring manager. So that's the target. It's the hiring manager. And the needs of the hiring manager are the target. And the meeting of the hiring manager is where you discuss those needs. And your strengths is what is going to address those needs. And setting that up in advance is what I do. And preparing my clients for that process is what I do. And helping people navigate the job market and prepare for it and get as many meetings as possible in the time they have and supporting them along the way is what I do. So when I make a system for that, I've got phases that are layered on top of each other, and it takes a period of time to get them done. Different phases for different roles and people. There's flexibility in there. So if someone is saying, take your phases, put it into this schedule, I'm going to fly in and meet a bunch of employers, although I haven't started even doing anything yet. I'm just going to go ahead and get the tickets. And, you know, it sounds silly now because I've gone through the whole process, right? You're hearing me, right? You're hearing what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm going to buy a house on, you know, in next month, but I haven't started looking yet. But I'm going to look when I buy the house. I'm just going to look and buy it. And I have no clue of anything else. I'm going to marry a wife. I'm going to find someone. I'm going to be there next month. I'm going to, you know, it's absurd, isn't it? So, you know, I'm not making light of anyone. This happens regularly. And I understand the motivation. There's a weight on people's shoulders. There's a lot of responsibility. Someone wants to care for their family. Someone has done very well in their life, in their career, very intelligent, very skilled, very capable. Hey, look, I'm not capable as a mechanic. If my car breaks, I need help. It's the same thing. I know the job market. I know it really, really well. I have unique, standout things to offer for people when they're looking for work in New Zealand. And I have a system. And if people hear me and hear the system, and if it works for you, then work it for you. And I'm here to help with that. And if it doesn't, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I'm happy to explain and happy to part as friends and happy to keep in touch and happy to re-engage if you decide to change your mind. So I'm here to enjoy life. That's the first thing. That's my first things first, to enjoy life. And so the advice that I have then, one more time, consider the gravity of what this is all about. It is huge. Immigration. Don't underestimate the impact that it will have on your life. For some, it's more than others. Obviously, if you've moved around 20 times and you haven't really any country to call your home, it won't be a big deal. That's how it was for me. But for most of us who do have a very special place in a very special homeland, it will be a big deal. So put the gravity of that together and get you know, you will have questions. Get answers from people who know. Makes sense for anything, doesn't it? Mechanics or immigration, and put first things first. You know, you can get caught up in a lot of details. It is a complicated process. There are many other pressures. There's financial, there's emotional, there's family, there's people, there's timelines, job, lots and lots and lots. I don't underestimate that at all. And I know that pressure adds to many of the issues that are coming out here when someone is just wanting to get something done quickly and ignore some of the other realities that are going to present themselves at some point, probably. You know, the realities are that the job market doesn't fit into our schedule. We fit into the job market schedule. That's how to do it. So if you want to be really effective, to round this off and finish it off, want to be really effective, you can be as fast as the employer wants you to be. If the employer wants you to go fast, you go fast. When it's time to fit you into his schedule, fit yourself into his or her schedule. And that's the way to go. Go from the other side and let the gravity pull you there rather than push, because pushing is like, it's a hard task. It's like pushing a string up a hill. You won't do it. But you can pull a string down a hill easily. And that's more like what happens when the employer is drawing you to him or her. I hope my metaphors make sense. I hope my story makes sense. And good luck out there. Keep in touch. You have my contact information here. If you have any questions, I'm always open for more. Take care.